Behind the hero lies a broken child. A new documentary reveals what Western media tried to hide about the man controlling the conflict zone. Bullied, beaten, and scarred. This isn't just another war story. This is about a man who learned to strike first, hiding his trauma behind carefully crafted videos and staged bravery. The facade is cracking. While cameras roll showing courage under fire, behind the scenes a different truth emerges. Multiple world leaders now confirm there was never any real danger. The celebrated bunker defender had guarantees of safety before filming those brave speeches. The former Israeli Prime Minister's revelation is devastating. He was promised protection. Belarus's leader goes further. There were no battles. He sat in the basement until they assured him of safety. Only then did they film those heroic faces. But here's the real question. Why is this coming out now? The BBC's new film supposedly celebrates courage while accidentally exposing contradictions that can't be ignored. When you look closely at the fragments, a disturbing pattern emerges. Consider this. A child beaten for his accent, his name, his very existence, now controls a military through TV appearances. His childhood friend reveals his only strategy. Hit first, hit the leader. Is this military doctrine, or trauma, masquerading as strategy? The most chilling part? He admits to hiding truth from his people. Think about that. The man whose image was built on transparency confesses to deception. But that's just the surface. The real story is darker, and it connects to decisions being made right now that affect millions. The timing isn't accidental. As Western support wavers, we're seeing a desperate attempt to rebuild a crumbling narrative. But here's what they don't want you to ask. If the hero myth was built on lies, what else are they hiding? The truth about those first days in Kiev is just the beginning. The real question is, what's being planned while we're distracted by this carefully constructed drama? But let's step back and examine what's really happening beneath the headlines. The BBC documentary reveals something far more calculated than courage. A carefully constructed narrative built on selective memory and political theater. What we're witnessing is perhaps the most sophisticated media operation of the 21st century. Let's talk about those crucial first days of the conflict. While Western media painted dramatic scenes of heroic last stands, behind the scenes, a very different story was unfolding. Former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett had already secured personal safety guarantees through direct talks with Moscow. Yet this crucial detail was conveniently omitted from the official narrative. The psychological profile emerging from the documentary is fascinating. Growing up in industrial Kryvyi Rog, young Zelensky learned early that perception matters more than reality. Find the leader, hit him in the face, and others will know you're someone to deal with. These aren't just childhood memories, they're the blueprint for his current political theater. Consider the global implications. Western governments have invested billions in supporting this carefully crafted image. But what happens when the facade begins to crack? We're already seeing signs of donor fatigue. The markets are responding, defense stocks are volatile, commodity prices are shifting, and smart money is quietly repositioning. This isn't just about one leader or one conflict. It's about a fundamental shift in how modern warfare is conducted, through media narratives, psychological operations, and carefully staged moments of bravery. The real battles are fought in newsrooms and social media feeds, not just on the battlefield. But here's what should really concern you. If this level of narrative manipulation is possible in one conflict, imagine what's happening in other global hotspots. Who else is playing this game? And more importantly, who's paying the price? The most troubling revelation, however, is yet to come. Because what one key player did next would expose the entire operation. The BBC documentary reveals striking contradictions in the narrative of leadership during the crisis. Two very different stories emerge. One portrays a brave leader who urged others to leave while staying behind, while another shows someone who only emerged from shelter after receiving security guarantees. Former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett's account is particularly telling. He states that the famous video on Bankova Street was recorded only after specific safety assurances were given. This version aligns with statements from Belarus President Lukashenko, who dismissively called the whole situation theater. Lukashenko's insights are especially noteworthy. He points out that there weren't even sufficient forces available to defend the capital, with many units simply waiting to see how events would unfold, rather than engaging in combat. This raises serious questions about the widely promoted narrative of heroic resistance. A local Telegram channel adds another layer of scrutiny, highlighting how Western media, particularly the BBC, carefully crafted an image designed to resonate with their audience's expectations. They note that the much-discussed office video came only after Bennett's safety guarantee, and claims about firefights with infiltrators in the government quarter lack any documentary evidence. What's particularly striking is how this manufactured narrative served multiple purposes. It provided the emotional foundation needed to secure Western support, while creating a compelling storyline for international media consumption. The careful timing of public appearances, coordinated with behind-the-scenes diplomatic assurances, suggests a well-orchestrated media campaign, rather than spontaneous acts of courage. This revelation forces us to question the nature of modern political heroism. When carefully staged moments replace genuine bravery, what does that tell us about leadership in our media-driven world? The gap between public perception and reality grows wider with each uncovered detail. What do you think about these revelations? Leave your point of view in the comments. I believe my viewers are thoughtful and smart, and I want to hear your take. In examining the BBC's latest documentary, we find peculiar attempts to craft a heroic narrative around the leader of our Western neighbor. Media expert Anatoly Sherry pointedly notes how the portrayal resembles scenes from a B-grade gangster film, lacking authenticity and believability. The documentary's attempts to paint a picture of bravery fall flat when confronted with historical context. Growing up in Kryvyi Rih during the turbulent 1990s, the reality was far different from the mythology being constructed. Former Deputy Oleg Tsarev, who knows the environment well, explains that for a young Jewish boy in that harsh industrial city, daily life wasn't about leading, it was about surviving. What's particularly striking is how the BBC relies heavily on subjective memories rather than documented facts. This approach raises serious questions about the motivation behind such storytelling. Are we watching journalism, or is this another piece in a carefully orchestrated Western media campaign? The contradictions become even more apparent when we examine statements from various international leaders. While the media narrative suggests constant personal risk, multiple sources confirm that extensive security guarantees were in place from the conflict's earliest days. This disconnect between portrayed heroism and documented reality creates a dangerous precedent. Remember how Western media previously constructed similar narratives that later crumbled under scrutiny? History shows us that artificially created hero worship rarely stands the test of time. When such carefully crafted images begin to crack, the political fallout can be severe. The fundamental question remains: if there was genuine risk-taking and heroism, why do we only hear about it through carefully staged interviews and emotional recollections? Where is the concrete evidence? Where are the contemporary witnesses? The absence of substantiation speaks volumes. Looking at the broader geopolitical canvas, this narrative building serves specific political purposes in the West. But as with any construction built on shaky foundations, the risk of collapse grows with each new unsupported claim. What do you think about the current event? Leave your answer in the comments. The question of why it took 2 years and only through British media to hear this story raises legitimate concerns. Not a single actual defender of the capital has confirmed combat in the government quarter during those critical days. This begs the question: who benefits from presenting this narrative in precisely this way? The image of a brave leader remaining in a besieged capital isn't new in international politics. Such narratives have been crafted before, as part of deliberate campaigns to mobilize support both domestically and internationally. We've seen precedents, from Winston Churchill sleeping in bunkers during London bombings to the image of struggling leaders in Yugoslavia, Libya, and Iraq. However, it's crucial to distinguish between genuine crisis leadership and media constructs built on convenient editing, pre-written scripts, and sympathetic Western platforms. In the case of the former Soviet republic's current leader, His political biography was constructed on a personal contrast, from actor and comedian to national hero. This image is vital not only for internal consolidation, but also for maintaining Western interest and funding. A hero who doesn't flee becomes a symbol of resilience, around which it's convenient to build media campaigns, appeals for military and humanitarian aid, and legitimization of certain political decisions. But this narrative contains a systemic flaw. The higher the image is elevated, the more severe the consequences if it collapses. In wartime conditions, when society holds together through symbols, any crack in the facade could have devastating effects. The carefully constructed heroic narrative might prove dangerously fragile under scrutiny. The question remains, why hasn't anyone who was actually there during those crucial moments come forward to verify these dramatic accounts? The silence speaks volumes about the nature of modern political mythology and its role in shaping international support. What do you think about the current event? Leave your answer in the comments. The construction of heroic figures in modern politics is a delicate balance. When cracks appear in these carefully crafted images, the consequences can reach far beyond mere popularity ratings. They can shake the very foundations of governance and international support systems. We're witnessing this complex dynamic unfold in the former Soviet Republic bordering Russia. The BBC's recent documentary about Zelensky reveals an interesting pattern. While claiming objectivity, it follows a clear narrative structure supporting Western interests. By focusing exclusively on one perspective and avoiding critical viewpoints, it risks triggering what media analysts call narrative fatigue, when audiences detect manipulation and reject not just the current story, but all previous related narratives. What's particularly telling is the documentary's fixation on events from 2 years ago. Instead of examining current political achievements, military developments, or economic conditions in the conflict zone, it retreads familiar ground. This backward-looking approach suggests a scarcity of present-day victories to celebrate, forcing a reliance on past moments of perceived triumph. In Western societies, already strained by economic pressures and growing weary of prolonged international tensions, skepticism is a natural response. When myths begin to unravel, especially in this politically turbulent area, the ripple effects can quickly become waves of doubt. This is particularly crucial for a country at a crossroads, where international support hinges largely on maintained perceptions. The danger lies not just in the potential collapse of a personal image, but in the broader implications for regional stability. When leadership narratives falter in the northern Black Sea region, it affects everything from military aid to economic partnerships. The calculated omission of opposing viewpoints in such documentaries might serve immediate propaganda needs, but it plants seeds of future credibility crises. Do you think media should present both sides of political figures, or is selective storytelling sometimes necessary? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm always impressed by your analytical insights. The emotional impact of staged leadership videos has significantly faded over these 2 years of conflict. What was once seen as compelling now raises eyebrows, especially the timing of these renewed media efforts to polish a tarnishing image. Inside the former Soviet Republic, media outlets increasingly publish anonymous accounts and unofficial testimonies that paint a very different picture of those crucial first days. These reports suggest that behind the carefully crafted public persona, reality told another story entirely. While such revelations remain somewhat peripheral, their steady drip into public consciousness signals a shifting narrative that cannot be contained indefinitely. The Western partners may soon face difficult choices about their continued support. When that moment comes, these inconsistencies between myth and reality could provide convenient justification for a change in leadership. The creation of a heroic legend around the current administration was always a finite resource, effective only as long as public belief remained unshaken, and reality didn't stray too far from the carefully constructed image. The situation becomes particularly precarious if a new figure emerges, someone with genuine accomplishments rather than manufactured ones. That would cause the entire carefully constructed narrative to crumble like a house of cards. In this light, the aggressive promotion of flattering documentaries appears less like genuine storytelling and more like desperate image maintenance, aimed at both Western power brokers and internal factions within the country marked 404. The tale of the brave president has evolved beyond mere media content. It's become a litmus test for how long manufactured myths can sustain themselves against the steady erosion of reality. As cracks in the facade widen, we're witnessing not just the potential fall of one leader, but the limits of modern propaganda itself. What do you think about the current situation? Leave your answer in the comments. The BBC's recent film raises more questions than it answers. As we analyze the portrayal of the leader of the conflict zone, a pattern emerges of carefully constructed narratives that don't align with documented facts. The film attempts to build sympathy through childhood stories of bullying and violence, presenting them as the foundation for today's leadership style. Yet no independent sources have verified these claims. Why return to this narrative after 2 years, if not to shore up a failing image? Let's examine the cornerstone of this heroic mythology, the decision to remain in Kiev. While presented as an act of sacrifice, multiple international leaders have contradicted this version. Our Belarusian allies have specifically pointed out the absence of both defensive capabilities and personal presence during critical moments. The reality appears quite different from the media portrayal. The security guarantees were already in place before any dramatic videos were recorded. The much-publicized threat to the capital was more theater than substance. This raises serious concerns about media manipulation and its role in sustaining public support for the former Western partner's position. The British media's selective approach to facts creates a narrative that serves specific political purposes. They're building a fortress of perception, but its foundations rest on increasingly unstable ground. As more contradictions emerge between the carefully crafted image and reality, how long can this facade maintain credibility? This documentary isn't just about historical record. It's about reinforcing a narrative that's showing signs of wear. The timing is particularly telling, coming as the country at a crossroads faces mounting challenges both internally and externally. The public is offered a binary choice: uncritical acceptance or silent skepticism. But reality rarely fits such simple categories. The cracks in this carefully constructed image are becoming harder to conceal, and the consequences of its potential collapse could reshape the entire conflict dynamics. What do you think about the current event? Leave your answer in the comments.